The Origin of Writing in Middle Africa, Part 2. The Kustel incense burner is also an example of the Slavic writing scripts that were derived from the Thinite pottery signs. Many Egyptologists were shocked to learn in 1979 that the A group of Nubia at Kustal used Egyptian type writing 200 years before the Egyptians. The fact that they had already began to use many of the symbols that later became the Egyptian writings shocked the world. But this was not new because Anta Diop had already noticed many years earlier that possibly all of the hieroglyphic signs of the Egyptian writing had probably originated in Nubia. The Kusu site was situated in a country called Tasseti. The name Tasseti means land of the bow. Tasseti was the name given to Nubia by the Egyptians. The Kustal incense burner indicates that the unification of Nubia preceded that of Egypt. The Tasseti had a rich culture at Kustal. Kustal Cemetery El had tombs that equaled or exceeded the Kemetic tombs of the first dynasty of Egypt. On the stone incense burner from Kustal, we find a palace facade, a crowned king sitting on a throne in a boat with a royal standard placed before the king, and hovering above him the falcon god Horus. The white crown on this Kustal king was later worn by the rulers of Upper Egypt. Another important inscription comes from Giebel-Shik-Suliman. Giebel-Shik-Suliman is also located in Nubia. These scholars who have examined the document usually only talk about the pictorial representations on the Giebel-Shik-Suliman monument. But the Giebel-Shik monument has much more. From left to right on this relief, we see a falcon on a sirek sign surmounting a house or a palace. In front of this village or palace scene, we see a prisoner bound by the stitch bow. The stitch bow was the sign for the stew. We can read these Proto-Saharan inscriptions that are on the boat. The translation is as follows: Thou family habitation, hold it upright. Faye's estate is on the shores of the watercourse. Cut thou sepulchre, habitation for the family here. Faye preferred to be obedient to the order. Lay low the celebrity in the large hemisphere tomb, and offer up libations that merit upright virtue. Pure righteousness is King Faye. This faying King Faye of Giebel-Shik-Suliman may relate to Pharaoh Pehor, the throne of Horus, since in African languages F and P are often interchangeable. It is interesting to note that there is an inscription on a storage jar from Cemetery El at Kustal, Nubia, that reads Pehor. This Pehor may be the Faye of the Giebel-Shik-Suliman inscription. Another inscription that's related to this period comes from Oued Mertetek. The Oued Mertetek inscription was found in Western Sahara. This inscription was found on the lower level of the Oued Mertetek site and dates to over 3000 BC by Wilson. This is one of the examples of the Libico-Berber writing. This inscription is very important because it also gives us an example of one of the earliest gods with the horns that we find from this Western Saharan period. These inscriptions, as I've said earlier, were not only used during the Thinite period or the Libico-Berber period, we also find that these inscriptions and signs continued on into the Chariot Age or 1200 BC. Here we have a picture of a Mandi inscription, including chariots and writing right above the chariots. The earliest civilizations on the Horn of Africa and in southwest Arabia dates back to the 2nd millennium BC. This culture is called the Tahama culture. It originated in Africa. The Tahama culture probably originated in Nubia. It is characterized by the cheesecake or pillbox burial monuments which extend from Darfur in Nubia all the way to the sites of Maine and Tahama in Saudi Arabia. Here we have megalithic monuments from Tahama, and it was a very extensive site that shows considerable length of habitation by the people. Ethiopia has a long history of civilizations and empires beginning with Punt. They also had a highly developed system of government led by kings and queens, like the rest of Africa, as indicated by the statues from Hualti. The Ethiopians ruled in Ethiopia and Saudi Arabia. Queen Makeda had a residence near Axum, but the main capital of Arwe was located along the southern end of the Arabian shores of the Red Sea in a district called Asabi, or Saba, which meant in the Tigrina language of the time, the southern lands. The first writing created by the Puntites was the Sabian writing. The earliest inscriptions written in the script were found at Hualti, Ethiopia. These inscriptions are over 3,000 years old. In addition to finding Tahama artifacts that are analogous to C group culture items, we also find that the symbols found in the ancient Semitic writing systems are based on the signs used in the Thinite writing. Here you can see a comparison of Sabian script and the Thinite script below it. If you look carefully at the Sabian signs and the Thinite inscriptions, you will see that they are quite similar. In fact, they are the same. Sabian inscriptions date back to the Diamite kingdom of Ethiopia. The Diamite kingdom dates to around 700 to 300 BC. The first Sabian inscriptions in Yemen only appear much later at the Yemeni Dam site, and they date to only 400 BC. We also find, in a sense, that many of the inscriptions that these people left are also included in the South Arabian inscriptions. The Ethiopians took writing to South Arabia and later India. Both the Amutic and Ethiopic signs are derived from the Sabian writing. The South Arabian scripts are also related to the Thinite inscriptions. Here you can see a picture of the Amutic script, or the South Arabian script. If you look carefully at these signs, you will also note that the South Arabian signs are also related to the Thinite signs, which are posted below. The earliest Sabian inscriptions in Saudi Arabia, such as this inscription from Ma'arib, appear hundreds of years after the Sabian script was already being used by the Ethiopians. It was also used to make the Thamutic writing, and Thamutic was a very popular South Arabian writing that was used in ancient times. We also find, in a sense, that the Sabian inscriptions involved in Tegias. Here's the Gias inscription of Ezana, king of Axum. The Gias writing continues to be used in Ethiopia, and many of the most ancient books of the Ethiopian is written in Gias. As we've noted from this simple preview, this overview of writing in Africa, we find that writing systems derived from Thinite. The Thinite inscriptions were used to write Sabian and even the Phoenician writing of the Phoenician people. These writings from Sabian later evolved into Thamutic, the South Arabian scripts, such as Manaan, Thamutic, and etc. And we also find, in a sense, that Sabian was also used to invent the Gias script and the Nagari script. The Nagari script is a writing system used in India today, and is based on the Ethiopian inscriptions. The Thinite script also was important in the development of the Libico-Berber writing, Proto-Elamite, Vai, the Indus Valley, and Minoan or Linear A writing. In general, we see that ancient writing systems developed in Africa. These ancient writing systems were taken by these African people throughout Africa, on into Saudi Arabia, and further east. The legacy of the writings of these ancient Middle Africans is a legacy which will last for eternity, because it is through these writings, through the Thinite pottery signs, that we had ancient Sumerian, ancient Elamite, the Libico-Berber, and also the Indus Valley writing.